Thank you, and we appreciate you joining us today. I'm Heidi MacEwen with the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce. We know it's important that you have access to our local elected officials, so it is our pleasure to host today's event with the Economic Development Council of Mason County, the North Mason Chamber of Commerce, and partnering with the City of Shelton.
And I'm Jennifer Berry. I'm with the Economic Development Council, and I'm just going to put a little plug in here. If you guys in the back can't hear us, we don't have a microphone, so just shout to us to shout to you. Okay. All right. We are very thankful for you attending. It is a little bit weird to be back with new people with no masks. I've double-taked to a lot of people that I've known for years. So if we ask for introductions, just please go with it. Big thank you to our legislative group of panelists. We've got Senator Tim Sheldon here. We've got Representative Drew McKenzie, and we've got Representative Dan Griffey. Very thankful for the work that they do for Mason County, for the support that they bring to us, and for the champion that they do for Mason County. So thank you.
And I'm Pam Bowles from the North Mason Chamber, and pleasure to be here today with you all. And we would like to acknowledge the Chamber and the EDC boards, the Chambers, and the EDC board. If you are in that leadership and your commitment to our healthy economy is an important part of our partnerships for things like today's event. So if you are part of that group, we would like you to rise and be acknowledged. So if you're on the boards of the Chambers and
stand up.
You know who you are.
So likewise, we also appreciate those of you that are here today to serve our communities through elected office. Your support is vital to our future and our communities, so which leads us into today's presentation.
So it's our pleasure to introduce our legislators, although there may not be much introduction known because they've served our community so well. Senator Tim Sheldon is a 35th District native and is the longest serving member of the legislature. He served 7 years in the House of Representatives, including 2 years as Deputy Majority Leader before being elected to the Senate in 1997. He served as President Pro Tem of the Washington Senate and has served on many Senate committees while authoring major legislation, including on-the-job training, infrastructure, job creation, and community notification of sex offenders, and I could go on, but I won't because we don't have 2 hours. He's also served as a Mason County Commissioner, and last week he announced that this would be his last session as state senator, and we appreciate his service and commitment to our community. While he will be missed, we've no doubt that he has earned his retirement and then some.
And I have the pleasure to introduce Representative Drew McKenzie. He is on the House Republican leadership team, currently serving as Assistant Floor Leader. He is also the Ranking Member of the Commerce and Gaming Committee and the Assistant Ranking Member on the House Appropriations Committee. Additionally, he serves on the Joint Committee of Veterans and Military Affairs and the Joint Task Force on Economic Resilience of Maritime and Manufacturing in Washington. Drew served in the United States Navy for 6 years. He is a graduate from his nuclear propulsion program and holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Excelsior College. He is the founder and president of the investment firm Falcon Financial and is the managing partner for Mountain Lakes Capital, having also invested in Mason County and other businesses. Drew is active in many, sorry, he's got a long one, many community organizations, including Rotary, Love Inc., and is past president of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome.
All right, and it's my pleasure to introduce Representative Dan Griffey. Dan began his career of service as a volunteer firefighter at the age of 16. And then was the youngest EMT in Washington State at that time. He continues now professionally as a lieutenant firefighter with the Central Mason Fire and EMS. Dan has been involved as a volunteer with multiple organizations, including United Way, Habitat for Humanity, and he has also participated in the Turning Point Survivors Advocacy Adopt a Room program and serves at the St. David's serving meals in Shelton. Representative Griffey serves in leadership as the Republican whip and has passed legislation to protect survivors of sexual assault, fight crime, and support our logging and shellfish industries, and to ensure that the government responsiveness and transparency. As we begin, there's also one, we should stop and applaud. Sorry, I didn't have So as we begin, there's also one other elected official who I would like to introduce and bring to the podium, and that's Eric Onisko. There's Eric. Eric is our mayor of the city of Shelton, and would like to thank him.
We'll make this short and sweet.
Right in the middle.
I'd like to thank all three of you for your support year after year for the city of Shelton and actually for Mason County itself. You guys have helped with many projects. We've been told for the last 3 sessions that don't expect much with these small sessions, don't expect much with they're lean, and you guys still come through year after year, and we appreciate that very much. Also, Senator Sheldon, we'd also like to wish you a fun-fulfilled retirement, unless you pull a Tom Brady on us. And we see you on a national ticket somewhere. Hint, hint. But we'd like to also thank you for the $206,000 this year for the parking facility, and also the $3.25 million for our sewer treatment plant. And also, we have no doubt our Shelton police officers appreciate the support you guys did this year to try to help with their safety. And that would be it. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gentlemen, we would like to you to share with us some of your projects that you are most proud of securing in this for our community during this session. Today we'll start with Representative MacEwen.
Thank you. Well, I think Eric summed them up pretty well. It's a supplemental year. We have a biennium budget, which means we budget for 2 years, and then in the even year, which we're in now, we do course corrections, and based on what is happening budget-wise and what the needs are. So those can change. We usually don't have massive projects that we're able to fund in a supplemental year, because most of that gets accounted for in the beginning of the biennium. You know, sewer is not sexy, right? But it's vital to economic development, and that is why I've for the last few years just been really pushing that, whether it's North Mason or at the city level, because it's the one way that we can help to keep rates down and allow for economic development. And I'm glad that we were able to get more of that done. It's an ongoing issue that we have within this county, and also needed upgrades for the police department as well. And then last year we were able to, after having the governor veto it the previous year, we were able to get the latecomers fee removed from the property right over here that would have resulted in a massive 6-figure fee if somebody bought it and wanted to do anything on it. And so that's something I was proud of. That took a lot of work working with the governor's office and the transportation department to get that done, so we can move forward in this community. But I don't want to take all of it. I'm going to turn it over to one of you guys to fill in some gaps.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you all for being here. Those of you who don't know me, again, Dan Griffey, been serving for 8 years now in the House of Representatives. They mentioned it in the intro, but I prioritize those that suffer sexual assault and those people that have suffered from coercive control for way too long. I've worked on this year, very proud that I was getting some informational posters put up at all of our rest areas for a hotline for those that are being trafficked, to have a resource to call. You know, a lot of people say, why don't they call 911? Well, what happens, and that's too myopic of thinking, they're so controlled by their abuser that they don't have even a minute to do that. And they also may have been forced to commit crimes themselves. A lot of the property crimes that we suffer, all our businesses suffer, they're being set up to do that by people who are trafficking them. So I'm glad that we got that done. I'm very glad that I was able to get a budget request and a bill passed that tells our DOT to keep our rest areas open. Right now, our freight mobility is really in question. All of you business owners understand that that is really troublesome and problematic. And all of our truck drivers have a logbook that they have to keep. And you know, at our kickoff, I said I was running a bill on that. I was successful getting that signed into law. I guess he hasn't signed it yet, but it hopefully will be signed into law. If he doesn't sign it, we put a budget proviso in the transportation budget, so we're going to get it all the way. Very proud of the work that Senator Sheldon did, and I don't want to take his thunder on the Highway 3 freight corridor. I'll let you tell him about what that is. But we worked all together on that, and to piggyback on what Drew said, it was a big lift getting that latecomer agreement done. As you well know, we've worked, this whole delegation has worked on it for a lot of years, so getting that done, very proud of that. There's a lot of disappointments, but I'll save the disappointments till the closing statements. But thank you so much for all you do.
Well, thanks very much. It's really great to be here. You know, Mason County is such a wonderful place, and we all have our love of it, or we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't take our businesses here and hire people here and work so hard. So, and you know, we haven't had the opportunity to go to events like this for almost 2 years now. So it's really great to be back, kind of to normal here. A couple things that were mentioned. The latecomers agreement was really a wonderful thing to work together on and finally get passed. You know, when they built the State Patrol building years ago in the 60s, they didn't have any water rights, they didn't have any sewer connections, they just had several different drain fields around. So over the years, and it started about 1998, the city, the county, the port, the PUD, the EDC, the chamber, all worked together on big infrastructure projects. And I mean big, ones that you couldn't fund in a year, you couldn't even build in a year or 2 years or 3 years. But look how now the natural gas line goes across the port property out to the prison. The sewer line goes out to the prison, water goes out. We've just done so many improvements with the city, and Mayor is correct, it's just been wonderful to work with them on the improvements in the city center and environs. You know, there's only I always say this, there's only 5 counties in the state that have only 1 incorporated city. And so we're unique, and there's good and there's bad. You know, infrastructure, look at Lewis County, 9 incorporated cities. Look at Grays Harbor, 9 incorporated cities. So they had those sidewalks and the sewers and all those things many years ago. So it's taken us a while to catch up, but we're really rolling now. We were very successful this year, I think, in an off year. There was some federal money that was accessible. And I gotta say, these 2 guys are the best 2 to work with of all time. It doesn't work if you just get it through the Senate. It doesn't work if you just get it through the House. You gotta get it through the House and the Senate. And they're always just wonderful partners for the time that I've been there. And I've served with many people in the positions, and I was in the position of state representative, but these 2 are the greatest to work with that I've ever had, and it's just a pleasure. We do have some money for Turning Point, $250,000 for them to improve their HVAC system. It wasn't that many years ago that we had no women's shelter in Mason County. Victims had to be transported to Thurston County. Margarita Prentice was, she's gone now, but she was the chair of the Appropriations Committee. And when she heard that, she had a visit out here, and we had the money in the budget. All about relationships, all about who you know and how do you get along in the legislature. Dan mentioned the projects out in Belfair and Allen. I see some of the people from our north end here today too. In 2005, I had money in the budget for what we called the Belfair bypass. 2005 is a long time ago, almost 20 years. And the money was there, and then it was gone, and it was used. Some of it was moved to the sewer project up there, but we got it back. So this year, we are about to start on the project and break ground next year. So that's exciting, but we still want the bypass, and it's now called a Highway 3 Freight Corridor, but Belfair bypass sounded like a heart operation or something. But it should start at Highway 302, where the intersection where the high school is, and go 2.4 miles all the way to Lake Flora Road. And that's been our position all along, and DOT would like to shorten it. Oh, we're going to phase the project. That means shorten it.
Yeah.
And we wanted to go all the way, so we put an extra $12 million into the $67 million that's already been appropriated. So DOT cannot say, oh, inflation took it away, we've got to shorten it. We also have $35 million in the budget to complete Highway 3 through Belfair, through down in the commercial area. And that would go from about where the elementary school is out to 106. And all the improvements that we've made through that over the years is transforming, I believe, that area of Belfair into a huge commercial operation. And I was criticized one time for saying that Belfair will be the Silverdale of Mason County. It's not going to get that big, but it is. If you go out there in the winter, there's no way you could take a shovel full of dirt and not get a shovel full of water. And that sewer project, while it was spendy, you can't build it cheap and you can't build it small. But we're going to see in the 2020s how that is going to improve the economy of Mason County and accommodate so many more businesses and growth. So I'll quit there and just say thank you again to everybody. As you know, I'm going to retire this year. This was my last session in Olympia, but I'll still be in office to the end of this year. So still working on a lot of things, and thank you very much for all the help you've given me over the years. The business community has been my rock. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys. We've got to hear about your projects. Now we're interested in shifting a little bit and talking about achievements that you have either completed or have reached for and are still reaching for, goals that you have for the future. Maybe we'll end on Tim so that he can talk about his goals for retirement. We'll go ahead and start with Representative Griffey.
Well, thank you. This part of it is the hardest part, and I left out last time. Yes, I'm very happy that we were able to, a couple years in a row, get money for Turning Point. Very happy that we could get some money for infrastructure, Allen Water System, very necessary. I'm so glad that we got that through. We don't have a lot of purveyors of water, and for us to have and enjoy an economic activity, we have to have water and we have to have sewer. We are working on a community project in Allen as well. The Oyster House, all of you that drive on Highway 3 see the progress that we're very proud to celebrate not only our timber heritage that we have here, but our seafood heritage, which we are tops in the world in. So I'm very glad at those. Some disappointing takeaways. I serve on the Public Safety Committee, so crime and punishment. There's still a pervasive attitude among the majority that law enforcement's the problem and it's not society's the problem. But I think all of you we together have to understand we are at a time of choosing right now. We've had many times of choosing that. With my research of history, we chose to do some things significantly different coming out of the Great Depression. We chose to do significant things in World War II. Coming out of the 70s, we elected somebody that really wanted to do something different in Ronald Reagan. And we saw a real difference in how our society worked. Well, we have time for choosing right now. We have to choose, are we going to have proactive law enforcement that can actually solve crimes before they happen, prevent murders and rapes before they happen, or are they going to be bystanders that have to sift through evidence and then go do notification on people's loved ones' doors that sadly a tragedy just happened. We also have to acknowledge that there is a war on law enforcement right now. Way too many law enforcement officers have died just this year, and we cannot allow that to happen. And our policies that we support, and I hate saying we, but the legislature has passed, has made that tragic. One of the very tragic things that we didn't accomplish, and it's not from lack of trying, was police pursuit. Right now, because we didn't change the police pursuit rules, 2 people could see somebody raped and murdered, call law enforcement and tell them that this car with this description and this license number did it, and law enforcement, unless they saw it, are not allowed to pursue. I mean, I gotta say that again, they're not allowed to pursue. So those that want to throw hand grenades and those sort of things to law enforcement for what they're not doing, it's not their fault. It's all of our fault. It is time for us to choose to give law enforcement the tools that they need, and we did not do enough of that. We did on mental health response. I mean, a lot of you don't know this, but serving as a firefighter, when we ripped the Band-Aid off, law enforcement stopped responding to those that are the people in society that needed our help the most couldn't get it. The people with suicidal idealizations with a gun or with a knife. Not always could I get a law enforcement response, and then as a fire officer I had to make up my mind, okay, is it going to be my crew or is it going to be that person? And I've never in my career had to make that choice before. So I'm really glad that we at least passed some reforms to make that better. That law enforcement will be responding as partners with us, as security partners, to make sure that everyone's taken care of in that. I'm very disappointed that we spent an entire $15 billion in surplus monies. I mean, I'm taking some of Drew's thunder because he's on that committee and I told him I was going to do it, but I'm disappointed that we spent it all. We didn't save money for a rainy day. We didn't acknowledge why we have $15 billion to spend anyway. Our tax structure didn't change. The price of goods and services went up, and that's why the state of Washington is enjoying so much money. And by spending all the money, we're going to cause inflationary prices. Inflation's going to continue to go high, and we didn't do anything to make it better. We proposed making it better. We proposed at least a 3-day tax holiday. So 3 days you didn't have to pay sales tax in Washington State. It failed. It passed through the House and failed in conference. When it comes to Public Works Trust Fund, all of you that serve in local government, you know that we just funded Public Works Trust Fund again, and they took the money out of the Public Works Trust Fund one more time. Now, they backfilled a little bit, so it's not completely gone, but it's time for choosing. What are we going to choose? Are we going to choose to run, we just going to allow people to do what they want, or are we going to say it's a loving effort to not allow people to victimize society in the way that is so pervasive in our society now? So I'm encouraged that we made a little bit of movement, but we cannot allow that to be the only thing that we do and hang our hat on. We are not done. If law enforcement can't pursue under reasonable suspicion somebody that could then go out and rape and murder somebody else, then we're not allowing them the tools that they need to have. And so that I will continue to work on that. I will continue to work on those that suffer sexual assault. I will continue to work for those people that are all too often trafficked in this state. And because we are a Pacific Rim trading partner and we are one of the most trade-dependent states in the nation, we suffer from that crime at an alarmingly higher rate. So most of the human trafficking that goes on in the United States either starts or ends right here in Washington State. And that's why it's important that we choose to not be afraid of things any longer. We choose to be in a free society. We choose to allow our law enforcement to be proactive and take care of our friends, families, and neighbors so we can enjoy the things that we like to enjoy. And with that, I will quit talking. Thank you so much for all you do.
So I just want to be clear, we're talking about priorities, and then we're going to have another time where okay, so I'm going to save the budget stuff for the next segment. So, you know, it's tough when Dan alluded to a lot of the things that happened that weren't good, and so when you talk about what priorities did you achieve, it's kind of it's more of a negative in what we were able to allow not to happen. One of those, you know, the cost of housing. I think everybody in this room knows that has just continued to go up and up, and we have an inadequate supply. So, in the House's infinite wisdom, they proposed yet another bill that would, by some estimates, increase the cost of housing about $50,000 per single-family home through more energy code items. And in the final hours of the session, we managed to kill that. And I look at that as a priority achieved, even though, you know, it's making something not happen. But if it had happened, it would have been that much worse. And that's on the heels of an energy code that went into effect 1.5 years ago that increased the cost by estimates of $30,000. So in 2 short years, the legislature wanted to increase single-family home construction costs by about $80,000 and then wonder why housing is not affordable. So I'm glad that we were able to stop that. One of the things, and I hope that it withstands the governor signing it into law, and if it gets vetoed, it wouldn't be because of this particular issue, but Gina brought this up with domestic violence shelters and the funding ratio. And, you know, there's 2 ways to, bottom line, in Mason County, we weren't getting the same adequate funding that's needed to run the shelter. And it has to do with, leave it to government, it has to do with a complicated formula that's in place. I could have done a bill to make it permanent, but in a short session, to get any bill passed becomes problematic real quick, just because of the nature of how things go in 60 days. So, being on the Appropriations Committee, I instead did it through what we call the back of the budget, and got it inserted in there, so it'll solve it for about 18 months. And we'll address it and hopefully make it more permanent next year. And I'm proud of that. And, you know, and I appreciate Dan's passion on those issues surrounding women and children and the violence that's perpetrated there. He's certainly been a leader in our caucus and in the House on those issues. But to be able to work on something that ties into that, I was pleased to do. So those are 2 main things that I'm happy about. There's another one. This gets a little complicated and hokey, but I'm the ranking member on Commerce and Gaming, which I like to call the Vice Squad. We deal with gambling, marijuana, alcohol, and tobacco. It's usually a pretty fun committee because it's not necessarily partisan. Everybody's got their own algorithm on why they are for or against some of those issues and the bills that come out around them. And as you know, the state has legalized cannabis and has had it in place now for 10 years. And again, I'm trying to make this as simple as I can. A manufacturer of some cannabis products discovered a way to chemically derive another derivative from the plant and then make product for that. And excuse me, that product it's equally as dangerous, but it falls into a loophole in our current law where it doesn't get regulated. That's an issue, right? And we need to solve it. So the Liquor and Cannabis Board creates this bill that basically, it's called agency request legislation, that would basically abdicate the legislature's authority on the entire issue, and then they'll go and figure out how to solve it. I resent that. I'm tired of agencies just taking and doing what we're supposed to do. Yeah, it's hard, it's complicated, but we can fix it and we can manage it. And so this was a horrible bill that they proposed, and it would have stripped the legislature of all of its authority and oversight on this particular issue. So it goes to the House floor, and when you've been there long enough, you figure out ways to make things not happen, and subsequently also how to make them happen. We were able to, working behind the scenes, not let that bill actually come to a floor vote. We still have to solve the issue, and then I dropped a bill that would actually resolve the issue in a way that would allow for the legislature to still have its voice. They ended up not moving it. which is unfortunate. And this is not a partisan issue. Senator Derek Stanford, a colleague in the Senate, who used to be on Commerce and Gaming with me in the House, dropped the identical bill. We worked together to try to make that happen in the end, and we didn't. But we'll have to address that next year. But my point is, there was yet again another opportunity for government to just shuffle an issue into the bureaucracy and take care of it behind closed curtains. And that's not the way to govern. Your voice gets lost in that process. And I'm going to continue to fight against those types of bills, that kind of legislation that strips out the authority of the legislature and subsequently your voice, because I do not think that's a good way to govern. So I'm really gearing up to talk about the budget, which is our next segment, so I'm going to kick it back over to Tim.
Okay. Thank you. Well, for a long time I've really worked on this urban-rural divide in our state, and I had a great opportunity, although it was a tremendous amount of work, to be a county commissioner for 12 years while I was in the legislature. I was always worried that I'm going to be criticized for missing a vote, so I know it was 25 minutes from the county commission office up to my out to the dome, and staff helped me a lot too to make that work. And I think it's important because legislators kind of forget that there's a local government. They like to pass things down to the local government, avoid them, let's send it down. But we're not going to give them any money to do it, but we're just let them. But you're already, it's at the county level, you're already taking, Ross knows this, you're already taking care of the jails, you're taking care of the prosecution, the state prosecution. We're doing that locally. We're taking care of the health department, all those things that are delegated. Anyway, without money. I know. But I just want to say a couple things, and maybe I'm just jumping around too much, but hey, I don't care, because I'm not coming back. The way it works in Olympia, and these guys know it, and they're very good at it, is making relationships and working together. So we've always had the worst, let's say it's the most frequently flooded state highway in the state. And that was at Highway 101, Skokomish River, Purdy Creek. That bridge was built in 1932. So in 2013, two other Democrats and I worked with the Republicans and took over the state Senate for 5 years. We had the majority. We called it the Majority Coalition Caucus. So what happened, Dan Swecker became, and Dan just passed away here this last year from Lewis County, he became the chair of the Transportation Committee. And I've been on the committee, I was on the committee for 30 years, 2 years I missed. But anyway, Dan says, Tim, what do you need in your district? I said, Dan, we got to fix that bridge. We got to put a bridge in there. Okay, $8 million in the budget for the Purdy Creek Bridge. That has made a huge difference for Highway 101. And people that now live at Lake Cushman say, I can live there year-round. I can get across every day. There wasn't a day that was, since that bridge has been built, that road has been blocked. It makes a huge difference for freight, all the things that happen. So again, it's about relationships, working, Democrat working with the Republicans, the House working with the Senate, the urban legislators working with the rural legislators. Another example was the Seattle Tunnel. Remember how controversial that was? Highway 99 tunnel and take down the viaduct. Well, it was a pretty close vote. I voted for it because I know that Seattle generates so much tax revenue. They help us so much. Our district, the 35th, is connected to the 36th district, my good friend Senator Carlisle. We're connected just by a ferry ride. So last year, I had time off and family was in Seattle, and I walked down to the Pike Place Market, and you walked outside past the vendors. It was quiet. That viaduct was gone. It wasn't dusty and dirty, and you had this wonderful view of Elliott Bay. That will be a premier waterfront for the world. It is just so beautiful to come into Elliott Bay and have that city there. And so Senator Carlisle, he's a good friend, and I think he understands that we need something as well. So they were helpful in getting the things that we need in our 35th district, because I'm supportive of that. Now, this year I voted for a couple bills that, I don't really like them, but they were going to pass anyway. They were going to pass anyway. I got a little bit back from the other side to do some of the things that we wanted to do. So that's important. I guess that's what I got right now, and we'll get some questions later. Thanks.
Well, we thank you for commenting on the projects and the priorities that you worked for and against this legislative session. We'll kind of go into an overview or some other things. I know Drew's chomping at the bit to talk budget, so we'll go ahead and begin with you.
All right, thanks, Heidi. So just by show of hands, whose income has doubled in the last 10 years? Great. How many of you in January decided to increase your spending 24% for this year? All right. So I was elected in 2012. Our state budget was $32 billion, our biennium budget. What we just did through the supplemental budget puts it at $65 billion in 10 short years. And we came into this session with a $14 billion ending surplus balance. Might want to take a call. And so we had an opportunity here to, in a time when you've got inflation, it was 7% at the beginning of the session, it's now 8%. We have a tax burden on property that we hear time and time again from people. And while we do have a fairly well-funded pension system, we're not fully funded, we had an opportunity to address those issues. And the legislature chose not to. Instead, they spent all that $14 billion in the supplemental budget in an off year. And it wasn't on anything really new, it just increased the spending across the board. We now have an ending fund balance of $200 million, which to you and I is a lot of money, certainly. But put it in perspective, if a family in Mason County making $75,000 a year, that means they're spending all that money except for $230. That's what they've left for something going wrong in their budget. That's the equivalent to what the state has done at the state level. We do not have room for error. I don't know if anybody happened to notice what Putin's doing in Europe. Energy prices, gas is going through the roof. And we know that that has a drastic negative impact on rural economies because we all drive somewhere. And so very disappointed in what happened in the budget process. And again, in a time of global geopolitical uncertainty that we have no control over, it was the wrong direction to go. Through a maneuver 2 years ago, the majority decided to, well, let me backtrack. 2 years ago, we had the pandemic starting. And on a bipartisan basis, we agreed to spend money out of the rainy day fund. It's officially called the Budget Stabilization Account, to get things in order for to combat the pandemic. That was a bipartisan thing. I think it actually passed the House unanimously. And to tap that fund requires 2/3 vote. And we've had other issues through the years where we've had to tap that with a 2/3 vote, and it's never been an issue. It's always been a bipartisan case. Yeah, we've got this issue going on. We've done it for wildfires in the past, that we've got to spend this money to take care of a problem. So we did that 2 years ago, and then because of the economic uncertainty, that budget stabilization account basically was not refilled. And what they then did, the majority through a procedure, is they created a separate new rainy day account. We're legally required, constitutionally, or not constitutionally, but RCW required, that when you have extraordinary revenues to put a certain percent into the budget stabilization account. They bypassed that by creating a new account that would not require that 2/3 majority. So they stuck $1.2 billion into that, and they're calling that the rainy day fund, which is a far cry from what we used to have. So bottom line is, we now have $1.2 billion in a rainy day fund that doesn't require a 2/3 majority, which is very unfortunate, and we have a $200 million ending fund balance on a $65 billion budget. That's the wrong way to govern, folks. And when families are facing what they're facing today, we do not have the ability to adapt. And if a recession hits, the first thing that gets cut is discretionary spending, which is a lot of social programs, which are the very things you need in those recessionary times. And we don't have the ability to adapt to that. It was an irresponsible way to do this budget, and I hope that things hold together economically, and so that we don't find ourselves in a precarious position. But that's where we're at right now. And to top that off, if you think gas is high right now, come July, thanks to a bill passed last year, it's not a gas tax, it's the cap and trade, basically, the clean fuel, or excuse me, help me out.
Carbon fuel tax.
Yes.
The carbon fuel tax. Projections are you're going to be looking at north of $6 a gallon come July here in Washington State. What's the impact there? We have a huge agricultural economy on the east side that relies heavily on bringing those goods to port in Seattle that's then shipped globally. We're just shooting those costs through the roof. The timber industry, that's going to have a huge negative impact. So I'm worried about where we're sitting right now, and it's unfortunate that those decisions were made. But I bring that up to put into context what the legislature did this year, and that's very unfortunate. So and I do that through the lens of being on the Appropriations Committee, and certainly voted against it and spoke against it, and will continue to. And it's my hope that next year we have a more balanced government. Because when we did have a balanced government, when Senator Sheldon had the courage to form a majority coalition, what happened? We stabilized spending, we increased the rainy day fund, they froze college tuition, ultimately then reduced it. Those are the good things that happen when you have balanced government. So I'm hoping that we can get back to that. And with that, I'll kick it over to whoever wants to go next. Thank you.
Okay, well, I ranted and raved about the other stuff quite a bit. Drew mentioned a hidden tax. So there is going to be a new carbon tax. It's going to be assessed in July on the producers of your gasoline. And so with oil, crude oil at record levels, it's going to have a very detrimental effect at the price at the pump. It's just going to happen. And so we need to be honest about it. We need to start preparing for it. So I want all you to be prepared for it. It's not, I don't know how you prepare for it, but I guess it's going to be less trips. We got a lot of other taxes. Right now, on the new transportation construction package that's called Move Ahead Washington, which has a lot of good projects in it, it really does, and some that benefits us, Gorst, specifically for the 35th District. But what's hidden in there is Commerce has now given quite a bit of money to write rules to end internal combustion engine use by 2030. And some might support that, but what I want everyone to understand, it just said internal combustion engine use. You don't have to burn gasoline in an internal combustion engine. You don't have to. Ford just patented a hydrogen internal combustion engine that has 0 emissions. And so I tried to make that statement on the floor, and I think the majority just got tired of me making statements they didn't want to hear, so I got gavelled through the whole speech. But what I was trying to tell them is, a lot of times government stands in the way of the progress that they're advocating for. And how can I say that? Well, you ban internal combustion engines, you take an inventor, somebody that's worked their entire life, put their entire life's body of work into a project. They're almost there. They almost got that hydrogen motor done. And then the company says, oh, by the way, the government just gave tax incentives for hybrid battery electric or battery only. Shelve your project. We're going 100% hydrogen, going battery electric and only electric. It stifles innovation, drives up costs, and it makes the Jetsons future, which I want to live in. I really do. It makes it so much further away. Because government picking winners and losers unfortunately has consequences. And that's a major negative consequence that I talked against. Don't stifle innovation. Say we would like you to achieve a goal and set the innovators free. Because wouldn't it be terrible if that brand new thing that Ford just patented never makes it off the ground because government decided an internal combustion engine's wrong? Well, it's not wrong, and it's not up to government to make those decisions. It's up to the great innovators, those great thinkers, the great minds to do. There's other things in that budget that really bum me out, and I'm talking transportation now because I'm on the transportation committee now. they bragged about that 2/3 of the budget's going to new projects. Well, there's an over-reliance on transportation, on alternative transit mode or transit to reduce our congestion right now. The Secretary of Transportation says it's immoral for us to put pavement down in enough quantity to reduce congestion, which I think is a mistake, and it shows you the direction we're going and why we're going there. If the Secretary of Transportation says that putting pavement down is bad, then we put all of our money into multimodal opportunities, which is 1/3 of that $16 billion that they're going to spend. So that means bike paths are going to reduce congestion. That means walking paths will reduce congestion. I don't think so. Maybe in the downtown Seattle-centric core. But I don't think it's going to do it here. It's just going to make everything we do a lot more expensive. And we can do things a lot better, and we can be better for the environment. We absolutely can. We live in the most beautiful district in the state of Washington that sequesters carbon. We sequester like 10 other counties' carbon, the carbon that they produce combined. You should be rewarded for that. You live in a wonderful area that it has wonderfully managed forest products that do sequester carbon at a huge rate. And let's reward ourselves. Let's pat ourselves on the back. 99.9% of the electricity that we produce, you can tie that electron to water produced or some other method. So we're getting there. Sometimes when government is too heavy-handed, we stifle the innovators and we make costs go through the roof. And so I'm going to continue to work on rolling that back a little bit, making sure that my colleagues that are really passionate about ending gasoline consumption, make sure that they understand that they're leaving a lot off the table. I don't think there's anything bad about gasoline, but what I think is bad is vehicles that aren't running well and that sort of thing. But who do we affect the most when we put such constraints on? We affect the people in society that can afford it the least. Because right now, have you looked at what a new electric vehicle costs? Have you looked at what a hybrid electric vehicle costs? Well, it's a lot. Anyway, I will continue to work on those issues in the transportation arena, being new in the transportation committee. I will continue to work on and make sure that there's no safe havens for monsters that go after people through sexual assault. Those people that are demonizing law enforcement, I'm going to work really hard to say, let's work together, partner with law enforcement, give them the tools to do the things that we need to do to where we feel safe in our communities and that we want our sons and daughters and grandchildren to want to stay in the communities that we're in. Also, freight mobility, I'm going to continue to work on that freight mobility piece and make sure it gets off, that we quit talking about it, that we treat our truck drivers very well, the people that bring our goods and services to us. What we found out last legislative session, we don't treat them well at all. Heck, at our airports, they weren't even letting them, where they have to wait for 8 hours, they weren't even letting them use the restrooms. I mean, we can no longer subjugate people to that length and expect that we're going to get the good things that we want to get out of this society. With that, thank you so much again for all you do, and I appreciate being here.
I share their frustrations. It's crazy you got to pass a bill so truck drivers can relieve themselves.
Yes.
I mean, I think one of the things that hurt us these last couple of years is obviously the pandemic. So it was virtual sessions. And when you have a virtual session, you're a committee, some people say, oh, well, look at all the people that signed up to testify. On big bills, you might have 3,000 people that signed up to testify. But the committee chairman can look at that list and call the people that he or she wants to testify. So that didn't work. Now, the fact that we were not in Olympia meant that you didn't meet face-to-face with members from all over the state. There's people that were elected 2 years ago in the House that I still haven't met.
Me either.
And when I and when I got down to Olympia just these last couple days, there were 3 ladies that I had not met yet. So taking off the mask and getting past this is going to bring, I think, people more together. We'll be able to talk and meet. We didn't have a dining room. I used to go when when I was in the Senate, it was changed, every 2 years. I'd go over to the House dining room and have breakfast over there for a week or two and get to know the people that were incoming and just sit at a table and talk. But you couldn't do that. So that was something that I think will really improve as we get away and get back to normal. And I know you got questions, so I'm not going to be, I'll make one more observation, is that in the state Senate, for example, the diversity now is tremendous. When I started, there were very few women. There was very few minorities. I came in with Rosa Franklin, a black lady who was a wonderful person. But now you look around that Senate floor and it's a great diversity. There's a pregnant woman that sits in the front row. Isn't that different? She brings another perspective to the legislature. So maybe we're getting there, but with your help, we'll get there. So I want to leave time for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. We are at 12:57. We want to respect everyone's time, so if you do need to leave at 1 o'clock, but we would like to ask if our legislators would be available to stay about 10 more minutes and answer some questions. So we do not have a mic, so if you do have a question, please raise your hand. Stand up if you were comfortable with that and ask your question so that we all can hear it, as well as our panelists up here at the front. And we'll try to wrap up at 1:10. And if you can keep your questions related to what we're talking about today, and just make it questions, and we'll leave it at that.
If you have to get up and leave, please
feel free to do so. Yeah. So, any questions that we have out there? Commissioner Trask.
I don't really have a question. I just have a comment. I want to thank you guys. I'm on the State Public Works Board. You guys saved infrastructure, funding for infrastructure, by taking some of the bad amendments away. I wanted to thank you guys for testifying and supporting the Public Works Board and for supporting Mason County. You guys have really supported us and helped us with funding, and we're going to need more, but heads up.
Go ahead, Patty.
Oh, Patty.
I'm just curious if one of you would like to talk about the governor's emergency powers.
Oh. I will. We were not designed, our founders did not set Washington State up to work in a dictatorship. It does not work well. It should have gone away, and the governor actually should give it away now. And the fact that it didn't get passed is a blight on the majority and on the legislature as a whole, and we should take back that normal legislative procedure. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, I just add in that ours has been developed over the last 40, 50 years, really with an eye towards the Cold War or a major natural disaster. You have a breakdown in communications and in transportation, and you need to stabilize the situation and get to some relative level of normalcy, and then return to governing. No one ever envisioned the pandemic scenario, and I did. I through a parliamentary procedure brought the bill to the floor last year. And my whole point in that is that, and this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with agencies trying to just take all the rule writing away from the legislature. Again, you lost your voice. And in that floor speech I made last year, I said, had the legislature been involved, I can see that maybe nothing would have been different ultimately in because of the makeup of the legislature and where the governor was at with things. Might not have been drastically different than what did happen, but at least your voice would have been heard. And it's not, and that's unfortunate. We have no ability to stop a state of emergency. And for those that feel differently, I would just say if there was someone else in office and declared a state of emergency on something and took drastic measures that you disagreed with, would you still hold the same thought process today? I think it's wrong with what we've done, and there was a bill that came to the floor, and it was a watered down version, and then frankly the House majority leadership decided to pull it. So they had no desire. they gave it lip service, and they've never had a desire to change it.
I think Tamara had a question.
Yep, Tamara. As you're talking about infrastructure, the freight corridor, and transportation budgets, and the projects scheduled for the Gorse Nightmare, will, moving forward with different types of infrastructure projects, will start making it where you have conduit put in, so that way we're only digging up the roads once. They're set to be able to be more turnkey because that conduit is there for all the other infrastructure that needs to be done to be able to make that growth be not only environmental but more economical down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did do a lot of work on that. So DOT projects are supposed to plan now for fiber and communications to be a plan, at least for it to be brought in. We worked on a bill called micro trenching that I think we should have got off the ground a lot. Well, it was very watered down on micro trenching, and there's a lot of worries about it. But it's a way to get infrastructure such as high-speed fiber optics in the ground quicker. But yeah, all of our DOT projects now have to have that. We have to have a plan with dealing with that in the project as well. So yes, that's going to happen, and I think that is a positive. Thanks for bringing it up.
And also,
follow-up?
Yeah.
And also with that, where there's projects using the Belfair nightmare of what street widening and sewer, looking at projects that need to share a pathway being done concurrently, so you're only digging it up once for that purpose.
I have argued with DOT that all of our major projects should have an event horizon that they see on their list, and the project engineer that's working, that is managing that, they need to see everybody who's involved. So get early in the process, know every utility. You know, the utility, the tragic thing for the Belfair project is the utility that could afford it the least got the hardest and most expensive ground. That was Belfair Water District. They got the most expensive and hardest ground to develop that, when they should have been elevated to probably the front, because it was the hardest thing to do. If they have an event horizon, and I will be the squeaky wheel on that, of every major project that we have here, having all stakeholders in, and that way you could say who can be at a different point in this, they'd be so much better. But right now the way they do it is Highway 3 was repaved like 4 times during that project. 4 times. I mean, it was insane waste of money. And if we as a motoring public had been told, if we just leave it all kind of torn up and little bumpy for an extra 3 years, we save $5 million or we save $10 million. That would be a good thing to tell people. And again, I think that discipline will help, and I'm going to continue to push for that. Thanks for bringing it up.
and along with that, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just going to add, thanks, Drew. I was just going to add, for example, going up over the Duckabush, and I think it's Duckbush we're talking about, the DOT is making PUD1 relocate their poles and hood canals, communications, the same kind of thing. And they call it a constitutional issue, that they can't work off the right-of-way. So they want the local utilities to spend all that money. So we've got to come to some common ground on this, and I think you can hear the frustration that the legislature has.
That's also why there's the push to extend the North Mason sewer. It makes sense to do it before we're building the bypass and have to tear it up. So I think there's been a lot of miscommunication in the community about why there is this push to extend that sewer right now. Because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to get this done once and for all.
Yes, sir.
So the Washington State Building Code is trying to pass something to ban natural gas. I don't know if it passed or not. I heard somebody that they're still going to allow it, but they're going to tag a lot of money onto it. I got a nursery. I heat 27,000 square foot. Banning natural gas pretty much put me out of business, because even if I would go to geothermal heat, I still need something to bridge January, February, when the geothermal is just not enough. So I'm going to either have natural gas that they're going to cut off, or coal, or propane, or something like that. Do you guys know anything about that?
Yeah, so I have one of our staff members who is very persistent, and the staffer is going to those code council meetings all the time, which I now I go from time to time because I'm on local government committee. It's true, there is a significant block of people in Olympia that want to ban natural gas. Natural gas, for the audience's knowledge, is 80 to 90%, depending on the combustion method, less environmentally, so the emissions that come out, 90% less than, say, a coal or a crude oil or bunker oil, whatever you heat with. It's tragic. All too often, the policy goals, like I told you before, we say we're going to ban internal combustion engines by 2030, but we forget that we might not even have the technology to make that happen off the ground right now. So we don't have it off the ground. We don't have a replacement for you, sir. Geothermal would probably cost you $50,000 to $100,000 to put in, maybe, and it would not be as efficient at all as what you currently have. So it is problematic. We tagged on 2 amendments on 2 very large bills to give options in a couple of the bills. Actually, happily, the bills that had the really strict bans on fuel types didn't pass out. It was that hybrid bill that Drew mentioned that we got off the ground. It was another cost driver that they didn't calculate or didn't mention. So I don't support it. I think we have to have, if we're going to ramp up to zero carbon, we have to have that ramp. We can't have a ramp that looks like this that we run right into the edge, right? So we're going to have a ramp. We have to maintain that. We'll keep working on it. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, one of the things about our state is we like to, our legislators, we like to set goals. You know, in 2030 we're going to have just all electric cars. No, not going to happen. When we're going to, in 2025 we're going to, have all renewables. It's not going to happen.
2040 is all electric planes.
Yes, 2040.
Planes.
So
airplanes, yeah.
I go to it's a group called the Northwest Power Conservation Council. 2 members from each state, created by the 1980 Power Act. You remember when whoops happened, all those other things? Okay. So what you've got in that council is 8 people. You've got the 2 in Washington and Oregon are butting heads against the 2 in Oregon, or Idaho and Montana. Who are the fastest growing states in the country right now? Idaho and Montana. So the idea to ban natural gas is you have to have some transition. These things, just like as Dan says, you can't happen overnight. The bill that we had in Olympia was extreme, and what it ran up against was a couple Seattle legislators, and one friend of mine, I mentioned Senator Carlisle. He lives in an older home in Queen Anne with the old radiator type heaters. Okay, natural gas, there's a natural gas plant, Seattle Steam, or right there in Seattle. When it hits home, people start thinking a little different. Oh, what about that nice Wolf, that $10,000 electric range we have? How are we going to fuel that, honey? So comes home to roost sometimes. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we can fit one more in. Please, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the laws that did pass was limiting guns to having 10 bullets per gun. And I don't know if any of you voted for that or not, but I do know that one lady said that she had to have more than 10 when somebody came into her house. I said, well, that means you can't shoot very well. I know that it doesn't stop people from using the guns that they already have that has 20, 30 shells in them. It doesn't limit the police or the military, but it will eventually, like seatbelts that came out in the 60s. The cars before that didn't have seatbelts. Now, everybody has seatbelts in their cars almost. So it's something that will come through, hopefully stop some of these mass shootings that are happening. Maybe not all of them, but it's a good start.
So I voted no on both of the gun ban bills that we had this year, and I'll tell you why. The most popular firearm in the United States is the Glock 17, and the Glock 17 would now not be able to be purchased by Washingtonians. I honestly believe that, and as a professional firefighter, I've made it my mission in life to save lives. And if I thought that banning guns would mean there would never be another murder, well, I'll tell you what, I'd have to think about it. But that is not, absolutely not the truth. So while I know that there are many out there that believe this is going to stop tragedies, what it's going to do is take law-abiding citizens that have never broke the law and make them not have an ability to own that, or possess that again. And I would like everyone to think, especially you know, in the guise of emergency powers, think about the thing that you do the most, that you love, that then society decides is not something they want you to have any longer. Think about them just unilaterally banning that. Yeah, I don't know that it will accomplish what the makers of the bill wanted to accomplish, but didn't support it. And I do understand the passion behind those that do. Thank you.
Well said. Yep, ditto.
All right. Well, we are 10 after, so we'll go ahead and just say another very big thank you to our legislators for the work that they do and for the support that they give Mason County. For the elected officials that we have in the audience that do it at a local level, we thank you as well. Both the North Mason Chamber, the Shelton Chamber, and the EDC, thank you for coming to the event. It's nice to see your faces, and with that, we're adjourned.